Okay, everyone, let's talk about MLB contraction. Now, now think about this. The MLB has 30 teams, and they almost went back down to 28 again. And the two teams that would have been disbanded were the Minnesota Twins and the Montreal Expos. Now, the Montreal Expos eventually would go to become the Washington Nationals at one point, but it wouldn't have happened had there not been a lease agreement in Minnesota with the Twins at the Metrodome because they were supposed to be there. They had a lease agreement um, up to 2007. The plan was supposed to go into effect in 2002. This was late 2001 that they were already planning, and Bud Selig had everything in place. Everything was going to go that way, and there was nothing to stop it. Minnesota sports fans could have lost, a third Big Four team. But they always kept the Vikings they loved the Vikings. And had the Twins left or just not existed anymore, there's a lot of people gone without jobs too. And I don't know how you would have repaid the salaries to them, they would go, who would have to drop down. That was also going to be in effect too. Um, let's take a look here. So, um, so the contraction plan fell through. Court injunction, and the Twins had to honor their lease. And despite the fact that the Metrodome was old, they were there since '82. They still had to honor it. Now, the Expos were later purchased by Major League Baseball, and then they would go on and relocate to DC. Had this plan gone through, this would have been, um, I do think that this could have hurt baseball more than it helped. The Orioles, however, would have just maintained the Mid-Atlantic all the way down to the Carolinas. They would have had fans in Delaware, fans in West Virginia. Maybe they get a fan or two in Ohio, but probably not. And maybe Tennessee, but not really at that point. Uh, you know, the Orioles kept that region for the most part. Now, now the Expos. Let's talk a little about them. Olympic Stadium. This was a multi-purpose venue. This was for the Summer Olympics of 1976, but it eventually would be formatted enough for baseball. It did have a retractable roof, even though I can't remember when it was open, much to its effect by that. And I think had this negotiation didn't happen, if this never even came around, I think this contraction plan never came around. I do think you could have kept the new stadium out in Montreal, but that never happened. Too, I do think that you could have put them in North Carolina, but another story, another time. In the first of the Big Four sports to have ever occurred, and I don't think that the contraction, more fans in the long run had this gone through it because your Montreal fans are mad at you, Minnesota sports fans are mad at you, and the city of Montreal, but the entire province of Quebec too. And yes, they might root for the Blue Jays, but in the end, you're only hurting very hesitant if to go out to the games, and they can't go to any of the games now because you've taken away their team. You've also disallowed minor league games. In Minnesota, the same thing would have happened too, although it would have probably gone down to Iowa, and the Dakotas. that region, that is the one, that area is just gone. So you're talking about probably millions of baseball fans just, could have given up. Reading from here, this is from the Wikipedia article. On November 6th, 2001, the day before the active MLB labor agreement expired, MLB franchise owners managed reports that no such vote would take place. That I did not know, reading that. So that's sort of like two stone, or it's a contracting, it's a contradictive view of what was actually happening. The owners voted 28-2 in favor of contraction. The dissenting voters, although the Florida Marlins, Tampa Bay Devil Rays, and Oakland A's had been discussed as candidates for elimination, the Expos and Twins were considered. Do you imagine the Athletics being the ones to go? And remember, San Francisco is the one that was kept too. They were the ones that, you know, the team, the attractive team, despite the A's winning three straight World Series, you know, they are the thought of as the Bay region, the Bay Area region of California, not the A's. And despite all the great things that came out of Oakland, no, and even still, um, the A's could have had that entire region. They could have been in San Jose sooner as well with Tampa Bay. They would have dominated that region, and we wouldn't have the conversation of a Las Vegas Athletics too differently in the end. So continuing on, the owners of both teams were set to receive $250 million buyouts to let MLB take control of, included division realignment so that each league would have an even number of teams. In the plan, the Texas Rangers would move to the American League Central. The Pittsburgh Pirates would move to the American League West. I did not know they would even go into the American League, despite everything too. They would have, yeah, because I've only ever viewed the Diamondbacks as the, as a National League team, but also take into account that of them, for whatever reason, to the American League, and now they sort of are in the American League. Brewers used to be in the American League, but I guess they did not want to put anything down there, um, given all this realignment. Okay, so we know this didn't happen too. So by December 13th, talks about control was announced that no teams would be eliminated for the upcoming season. So this was one big thing, and I don't think we're ever going to see another even proposal of the MLS. I think that this was one of the things that really did, just the back and forth talk certainly hurt the everything in their power to keep the Expos in Montreal and not move them to DC. This is coming from a guy who grew up 50 miles outside of DC. I think that they should have worked on expanding too. And you didn't need to go to Tampa Bay to as well. You never had that too. But National League, it did work out in the end as they did win the 2019 World Series. And despite a proposal that fortunately was taken off the table at a good time, and I think that we will look back on this as because it did save two owners, it did save two teams from losing fan base, and it saved the MLB for a little while because it also saved, it also helped engaged and, be able to go to a game. And also was there for new fans for Major League Baseball, whether they were in Montreal, DC, or Minnesota. But in the end, and I'm glad that we have 30 teams in the MLB, but now we have to get to 32. And it's the oldest league in the Big Four sports, but I hope we can get one. Take care.